All right, here we go. Welcome everybody back to Podcast and Chill. I'm with my special guest, Tyler, my good man. He's been on Nobody's podcast before, and also the Neil Quinto Experience podcast. So welcome back, buddy. Great to see you.
Hey, thanks for having me. Long time listener, first time caller.
Well, definitely done the show, but now you're gonna be on some video where our next venture here is we've been putting everything up on YouTube and enjoying that. And every week we're adding different things, my partner Chris and I. So hopefully you guys have been enjoying that. But I wanted to get Tyler reached out, and he's not a new dad, but he's a couple months in, and he's broken in. And tell us quickly how that's going.
Oh, dude, it's the best thing ever.
The best.
Um, yeah, I mean, everybody says that it's a life changer, and it is, but it's for the best. Like I
Oh,
can imagine. Uh, we're we're already talking about whether we want to get on their bandwagon early and have another one here.
yeah,
Whether
there
we're
you go.
two under two, I'm not sure about that, but we'll see what happens.
Well,
With
the
this
better.
whole lockdown, there's some shady stuff going on. You never know what's going to happen.
Yeah, maybe wait and see a little bit and see how that comes up. We'll let you know what happens because we're expecting it in September, which
Yes,
obviously and so yeah, they call them coronial babies.
Corona. It's a whole new generation. They're
That's it.
completely antisocial. They don't even have any type of
Yeah,
social
they'll have no
network at all
connection with
now.
yeah, no connection whatsoever. It'll all be like this Zoom. This will be
Yeah,
like totally natural for them. But yeah, it's interesting to think of like the great generation are the ones that were born through war and fought through the wars and lived through them. And it'll be
yeah.
interesting to see in the future what children that were born during this time. And even when you
Yeah.
think back to millennials, which I've heard and read a lot about millennials, they grew up with internet. Millennials also, they went through 9/11, the
Mhm.
Great Recession, 2008. They've just seen a lot of shitty stuff in their lifetime. And
Yeah.
so, it's not, you can't blame them for being critical about not wanting to have deeper interpersonal relationships. A lot of them don't want to get married, don't want to buy a house, don't want to have children. And you know what, you get it because you're so heavily invested, and sometimes you're like, why would I bring a child into this?
Yeah. I
But it all
know
goes
quite a
back
few
to what
people
you
like
said.
that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. It all goes back to what you said. And it's like it's an unexpected thing that like rewards you like so many ways that
Oh,
you wouldn't even know until you have
yeah.
your child. Like,
Yeah, like when you have a dog and they come, you come home and the dog's like super excited
excited.
to see you. But then like now you're pushing the dog out of the way and your kid's sitting there, and like ours is only he'll be 6 months in a couple weeks,
Yeah.
and it's like you just want to see him right away, and he's giggling and squealing at you, and I can't wait till he starts talking. I don't know what's gonna.
Yeah.
It's like having a dog and it starts talking to you, right? Like
That's right. And now you
be
like know
amazing.
you can know each other's thoughts. That's the things with animals. Like you have to, have that sixth sense with them. You got to
Yeah,
kind of
yeah,
feel out when they're hungry, when they're pouty, when they're this and that,
yeah.
right?
You're like, you
But
good? You good?
yeah, but that's the beauty. And like when you're with your newborn, they change so fast.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
It's insane. We were looking at pictures today
Mhm.
of Jack, and we like you don't see like you see him every day. It's like looking at yourself in the mirror. You don't notice yourself getting older,
Yeah.
but and then you look at pictures from when he first came home, and you're like, that doesn't even look like him. Like,
How
you know
small
what
they
I'm
are.
saying?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Exactly. That's why I always tell anyone that new parent, like, just really soak it in because it goes by so fast. It's the same they said, like, on your wedding day, you're like, it's all that planning for one day.
yeah,
This is a little bit different. Obviously, you get your child for your life, the rest of your
yeah.
life, but like, you don't realize how quickly, not even just physically, how quickly they grow, but like communication wise, everything.
Oh yeah, yeah. He's fascinated with our dog. Like,
Oh yeah,
uh,
that's cute. Yeah.
it we're feeding him and whatnot, and she's always sitting right underneath his little high chair, and he gets distracted by the dog all the time, and you're like, no, no, come on, eat the
Yeah,
food, eat
keep
the
eating.
food. But
Oh, beauty.
yeah, it's an amazing thing, and you guys are gonna experience it again all over again,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
which is awesome. And and we had a couple people at work that just gave birth to kids, and one was a C-section, and
Okay.
they couldn't. He wasn't even allowed to go into the OR for it because of the
The dad wasn't.
constraints on PPE and everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it was the first kid they had was a C-section, and there was a high risk of the second one being that, and
Right.
ended up being that way, and so he wasn't even in there with her, which is scary for the both of them. But it's the time we're in right now, and with everybody trying their best to make PPE and donate PPE and everything to healthcare workers and keep them stocked. It's great. I would not right now. I'm hoping for you guys' sake that this is all blown over by then, and it's all back to normal for
Yeah,
you guys, and
definitely.
because
We're
I
keeping
wouldn't
an
wish
eye
that
on.
on anybody.
Yeah, you're keeping an eye on like the births that are coming up. Like, it's that they call it the reticular activator. Once you start, you're looking for something. Let's say you were shopping for red cars.
Hmm.
All of a sudden on the road, you're going to see red cars. And then, we announced that we were having another baby. And now you are aware of all the people on social that are having babies at the same time, right? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
it just, become open to it when it's part of your everyday thing,
Yep.
when it's your reality. So we're like trying to pay particular attention to how babies are being delivered, what the care situation is like, how many people are allowed in, for visiting, etc. And
Mm-hmm.
obviously right now it's complete lockdown.
Yeah.
Here they're letting one individual family member, immediate family member, with the mother to deliver, but you cannot, if you leave the hospital, like, that's it, you can't come back. So you're with your child, with your spouse the entire time, and that's it.
Oh, crazy.
I've been told that they'll relax those rules. One of the first things they'll relax would be that, because
Hmm.
how critical, obviously that experience is. But we're getting robbed of a lot of experiences right now, right?
Oh
So,
yeah.
and that's why we've come on today to cast. It's not just podcast, but to shoot the video here. And I
Yeah.
almost
Catch
scratched my
up.
nose. Yeah, you watch yourself. You'll see how many times you come close to wanting to touch your face. Seriously, you like,
I know. I
or once you put the gloves on, you're like, oh no, you can't.
I know. Yeah. I got a respirator that I wear at work and stuff all the
Yeah,
time, and it helps. Because it's a
right,
half face,
right.
and so it actually helps you from touching your face, because if you get itchy or whatever, you're just like,
Forget it. Yeah,
yeah,
and then you're not
there's
itchy
things on
anymore.
my face or whatever. So it's like a one extra step, because normally you would have been like, oh yeah, itch my face or whatever, right?
Yeah,
And yeah, well, I watched Contagion, and they were talking about
yeah.
how many you touch your face, whatever, 50,000
That's it.
times a day. You're like,
You
what?
don't realize it, right? Until
Yeah.
you become
Do
aware
I
of
have a nervous twitch or something? Why am I always touching my face?
it. So yeah, this is why we're coming together and we're recording now. Is we wanted to discuss the signs of the times and what's going on, and it's not
Yeah.
really unique to everybody, but everybody has some thoughts about when to go back. Did we shut down soon enough?
Hmm.
And you and I tend to get really not heated, but we got some opinions on that, and I'm starting to hear more. And I don't know if it's the people that I surround myself with, but I think a lot of people are ready to go back.
Yeah.
So two questions for you. Well, three, I suppose. Number one, is coronavirus real? Is the COVID-19 real? The things that you're hearing and being exposed to, because I do want to delve into that,
Yeah.
because the big thought leaders and influencers and social are taking a lot of heat lately. I talked about this on the last podcast with Chris, namely London Real had David Icke, a polarizing personality, on his show or an interview, and they pulled him off of YouTube, Facebook,
Mm.
LinkedIn, and that to me is a sign of some kind of a threat. Right?
Hmm.
People don't want you talking about something. They take your right to free speech, right?
Yeah, I don't understand how they can exactly do that. I guess if you're using their platform to broadcast your message, I guess they technically own your content in a way.
Yeah,
But
certainly. And I think it has a lot to do with monetizing, and especially on the big social sites. they don't want people just using hashtags and tagline because it's too easy. It's all over the place, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
it's easy. They're easy markers to boost your views, boost your subscriptions, etc. So that's been a
yeah.
big target, and it's kind of a no-no.
Well, like
Yeah,
a big news companies are actually like ABC and stuff are they're getting less views than you
and
know
social, yes, and
than
they
than
feel the threat
social.
of that. Yeah, there
Yeah.
was a 60-minute interview with the CEO of YouTube, and I think it was ABC or NBC,
Mm,
and they're feeling the heat. They're like, you guys are getting more views and hits than we are, and it's like, we don't like that, but
yeah.
they can't help it. And but the less production, you could say what there's more freedom. And it's not it's not they got permission to report it. Like
Yeah,
you're
yeah,
really saying what
yeah.
you feel.
For the most part, you can, and I feel like it's with the whole free speech thing that you can that it's a good thing because you know I shared an article with you about Washington Post and stuff, and there's been other big name news uh, papers and CNN and stuff who've which Donald Trump's called out about their lack of taking it serious and lack of you know sort of warning the public about everything, and whereas the non-traditional media was sort of woke about this from the very beginning, saying everybody needs to take this very serious. It's a
Hmm.
and mainstream media or traditional media was basically brushing it off for the beginning, December, January time. So
So yeah, let me go back to my question, and we'll tie it all in here. Do you believe in the validity of CV-19, COVID-19? What are you hearing, or what have you? Yeah, let me ask you that first.
well, it seemed to be ever since 5G started this seemed to be coming coming around. No, I believe it's a real thing. It's funny, I was talking to a guy at work last night about it, and they seem to think that, and this is possible, that there's stronger strands because, like, you look at New York, for instance, and different places, how hard it's hitting places like that. Italy, it's almost like, and we have cases here, in London and surrounding area,
Hmm.
but it just seems to be like it's almost like a harder hitting uh, virus in some of the instances. But could be wrong. You know, they I think the virus is a real thing. I was sort of an early adopter of wearing masks and PPE when this happened, and started stocking up, you know, well before everybody kind of got paranoid and started buying toilet paper over food. But yeah, I think it's a real threat, and I honestly don't think it's going to be gone away for a while.
Yeah, you start to hear, and Prime Minister Trudeau would say that there's no normacy until there's a vaccine, which could be in 2021. You've heard
Yeah,
18 months in the States. You hear 5 months, and so there's not a consistency in the reporting, right?
exactly.
You know,
And I like, how long are you going to wait to take Bill Gates' vaccine?
well,
You know what I'm
that's it,
saying? Like,
right?
I'm not going to just say, oh, I'm going to take this vaccine because there's no, 5 years down the road we all have kidney failure or something because of it. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not really interested in taking a vaccine that hasn't been through clinical trials.
Yeah. Oh, here it is. I want to play this. Then, can you see it with me?
Yeah.
Okay, great. I think he was asked about. Oh, geez, this is. I didn't even know it was a Chinese interview, but I think his reply is back in English. So
Okay.
let's hear this.
些网友甚至攻击您，说病毒是从您疫苗的这个研制过程中出来的。您在用什么样的心态面对这种？
Okay, hold on. Because of our audio listeners, I'm gonna I'm gonna read the caption. So that this is the question being posed. He's on CCTV, CGTN TV. Bill Gates being interviewed Okay, you're being attacked in the
甚至
U.S.
攻击您，说病毒是
They
从
say the
您疫苗的这
coronavirus
个研制过程
originated there,
中
the
出来
process
的。
of the
您在
vaccine
用什么样的
development.
心
What
态
is
面
your
对这种
take, Bill
声音？
Gates, on the Bill Gates
I'd
conspiracy?
say it's ironic if you take somebody who's doing their best to get the world ready and, you know, putting, in my case, billions of dollars into these tools for infectious diseases and really trying to solve broadly infectious diseases, including those that can cause pandemics. But that, you know, we're in a crazy situation, so there's going to be crazy rumors. I hope, whether it's individuals or countries, that in some ways this shows us how interdependent we are, that to stop a global pandemic, we need to find whoever's the best, whatever the best vaccine construct are, the best drugs, and we need to make it without just focusing on one country. We need to make it for the entire world, including for countries that don't have the resources to pay for vaccine research or vaccine factories. You know, they're actually, many ways, should be the priority for what we do. So, you know, you know, there's lots of attacks out there. In general, people have been very positive.
All right. Okay, so that was a snippet of it, and take from.
I wonder what he thinks about Taiwan.
Yeah. Oh, what do you think he thinks about Sweden?
Yeah.
Right. When you hear so interesting podcast that you sent to me, actually, Dan Crenshaw on the Joe Rogan Experience podcast. He's a congressman in the United States, in the state of Texas. He's a Republican, and he vehemently defends President Trump, and he's in opposition to left-wing media. And they started talking about Sweden, and Sweden has taken the stance of, you know, business as usual, right? They feel confident that they can handle cases as they come. Unlike, you know, United States, Canada, maybe Canada more aggressively. We've had shutdowns since I'd say really middle of March. It was just before the March break. It was like the Thursday before the March break, and then they announced there's going to be 3 weeks shutdown, and then they extended, and now we're into May, right? May 9th, I believe.
Yes.
Something like that.
Yeah, people were already weirded out at my birth. Like I had a family birthday party at the beginning of March, and it was already, people were starting to get a little weirded out. You know,
already got
extra hand sanitizer, and people are kind of talking about it, and you're like, you don't really know what to think about it then, but then it escalated really quick.
Yeah,
you know, it's like all of a sudden they're calling, you know, we wait for typical liberal to be late 45 minutes for a press conference. Like, who's late for work when they don't even have to leave their house? Like,
I talked about this with Chris, and again, this is just information that they were thoughts that didn't dawn on me. They're like literally being shared out there, and it's like, okay, yeah, for 45 minutes late, and then 17, 18, 20 days past his self-isolation because Prime Minister Trudeau's wife had got COVID-19. He's still in self-isolation. You're like, meanwhile, I see Trump press conference every day outside of his house. He's not in his pajamas. But it, like, you know, it's kind of like a time though, like if you're a leader of any country, I think you're going to get the criticism is going to be not embellished but enhanced no matter what you do. Some people
didn't get it as bad as Boris Johnson, like going around shaking people's hands, and then the English people are pretty ruthless. They're, you know, tweeting saying, "I hope you die," and they're pretty ruthless. But.
And you go back, the Iranian health minister, he like did a press conference. He's sweating, he's blowing his nose. He's like,
they don't have it. It's not here. COVID is not here.
There's no COVID. Next day, he's in the hospital. He's taking a selfie. He's like, okay, I contracted it. Ridiculous. But you can't win because really both sides really are, you know, you're going to get a lot of, okay, Trump acted too late, that he acted too early. But what I liked about the Dan Crenshaw Joe Rogan Experience podcast episode, it led me to listen to more of Crenshaw's his own personal podcast, and he has a segment that debunks a lot of the news, at least that was presented mostly by left-wing sources, you know, your CNNs and so on. So he talks about like what the point was and then where they were wrong. Because at the time that Trump was talking about shutting down travel from China, to and from China, they were still talking about impeachment and other stuff, right? They were just like,
Yeah.
they weren't even, and they were denying. Oh, there was the article that you sent me from the Washington Post. So we'll take a look at those two things right now. And that being that that it could not be contracted.
Yeah, they're saying it couldn't be. They couldn't make the jump. They're saying like,
Yeah.
and who said that and everything. Where basically they couldn't find out if there was a link between it making the jump from bat soup or bat to
Yeah.
person.
Right.
And it seems like they were very ill-informed and wrong about that.
Right. They go from, it can't make the jump. And then the next week, they're saying you didn't act fast enough. So it's very hypocritical, very ironic. So here it is. Get a grip, America. The flu is much bigger threat than the coronavirus for now. So you see a ton of this. You see a ton of this.
Yeah.
And then you see the statistics and the death rates of other deaths, like car accidents and abortions and other diseases. And you're like, well, okay, yeah, you could pick anything to compare against. But
yeah,
it's
and a
not
lot
an
of the
apple to
diseases
apple.
they were comparing against were actually pretty terrible diseases,
Yeah,
like cancer and stuff. And they're like, listen, it's not as much death as that. You're like, well, I hope it wouldn't be, because if it was, then it'd be a lot worse, than it is. Italy has a 10%, around a 10% mortality rate from this, and the global mortality rate from the coronavirus is around 3.4%.
Oh yeah.
Whereas the seasonal flu is less than 1%.
Right.
So anyway, and percentages are kind of hard to go off of, because when you actually think about how much 3.4% is, that's a lot of people out of our population, considering we're in the billions now for population, right?
Yeah, I feel like we're a little too casual about saying that's right, because the percentage is always smaller than the actual. When the reality is, like, one death, really, the meaning of that. You may not know them, but it's humanity. You know what I mean? We step away from humanity. We start talking numbers. It's like people are not math.
Yeah.
Right.
What happened if 3.4% of the people you knew died? Then how would that affect you?
Right. Exactly. Yeah. No, certainly. Like, here's some numbers now. I think you can see this, right?
Yep.
What was it? Oh yeah, confirmed cases in Ontario 7953, recovered 2574, deaths 274. In Canada 31,000, 1,000 recovered, 1,300 deaths. But worldwide we're looking at 2.2 million, 568,000 recovered, and 150,000 deaths now worldwide. So while we're on that topic too, I have no faith in any of the numbers that China shares.
No,
right?
Not one bit.
1.5 billion people, and they had 3,300 deaths. Like,
and I mean,
I can't remember.
I don't think their medical, personally, given the situation of China, I don't think their medical quality is better than ours or the United States. And yeah, and the whole thing with the cell phones, like 21 million cell phones went dark, right?
Oh, okay. Yep.
There's a Bloomberg news article about that. So let's say, because you might have lost some users from 5G, the economy getting down, some people canceling maybe second lines. Let's say 1 million of those people died from coronavirus. That's a huge number and a statistical anomaly compared to what they said, 3,500 people or however much they said that actually passed away from they're claiming passed away.
Right.
from it. So even if you round down those numbers to minuscule amounts, it's still higher than what they're claiming. And the sketchiness around all of the doctors who sort of were whistleblowing around it,
Right. And the death
and
of the
how they
doctors
died,
on the origin. Right. Right. Yeah.
like, I don't think,
Well,
you know, it was,
state-run media, state-run statistics, everything, like it can't be trusted. But like I have it here, 4632 to date. That's how many deaths there were in China out
okay.
of a country of 1.5 million. If you think about the density, you think about like they have cities that are in the multi-millions of population, right? But I think what
Yes.
Canada, I've said this on numerous occasions, the reason why we've been able to kind of stay ahead, but I think it's relative. I think I'll say this, and people are kind of pat themselves on the back, and we're not out of the clear yet.
Hmm.
But we're really a relatively young country. Canada's a young country.
Yeah.
Our population, it's kind of small for such a large place, right? Like if you think of Italy, and
Yes.
like 60 million people in a country the size of the state of Texas, something like
Hmm.
that. You know what I mean? And like, everybody's going to be crammed in, and that northern Italy region, I've heard is one of the, by average, is one of the oldest populations too. So you have an
Hmm.
older population susceptible to, well, not, but having already a history of ailment or
Hmm.
sickness. That's what they say, that the COVID-19, that's where it devastates. And I think between
Yeah.
them and Spain, uh, that's exactly what happened. It was
Yeah. They got a lot of smokers there too. When I was in Italy
Mhm,
2 years ago, and in northern Italy as well.
mhm.
Um, and yeah, it amazed me the amount of people that smoked. It almost reminded me of back in the day when you had the non-smoking and smoking sections of restaurants. It's just there's so many people that were smoking there,
In the eater
which is
in the restaurants.
around
Yeah.
like on the streets and everything. Like
Mhm.
everybody seemed to be sort of having a
Yeah.
dart, and you don't necessarily see that as much in Canada.
Right.
There's the demographics that kind of do it, and the older generation as well that maybe still are smoking,
Yeah.
but we
And
don't
they're
have.
more opposed to different changes. Like, if can you imagine if they try to institute like no smoking indoors or and that kind of thing, like
Ah,
they do here completely,
yeah,
like
yeah.
it's backlash.
We're more like sheep here. We kind of just go
Yeah,
with the
we gotta go.
flow, and we just say, hey, whatever,
Yeah,
as long as the beer store's open, and Tim Hortons drive-thru still open, then I guess everything's okay.
that's it.
But
Our values and our cultures are completely different. But I had this conversation with Chris, and he made the great point about, because like they closed marijuana shops, but they keep
yes.
the liquor stores open. And I said, well, what do you think that is? And he says, because I'd heard, I just right before we recorded, the news was saying, if they did close liquor, alcohol stores, then basically we're going to have a higher number of deaths. And because it's the number, how many people self-medicate, right?
Hmm.
They cope with
Yes.
things like smoking, drinking. And if you were to completely eliminate the drinking, then you could see people really get sick, right?
That's why the black market for weed is still around, right? They and because all the potheads are most of them are conspiracy theorists or somewhere along the lines, and they're like, hey, I don't trust this government weed. I've been getting the same weed from the guy around the corner my whole life, and I'm not gonna get this government supplied stuff and then
Yeah.
looking out like it's closed.
And it wasn't
And
any cheaper, really, right?
yeah, and the fact is, so you're gonna close you're not gonna close the liquor store because people will get violent. But there's all these talks about, especially back in the day, the devil's lettuce and of people smoking pot. So you close the pot stores, and the potheads are just gonna be like, oh well,
Whatever. Yeah. I'll
they're
just go to my
they're
guy.
mellow. But you get rid of somebody's Bud Light, maybe they go off the deep end and they can't cope.
Yeah,
which is
that's it. Hmm.
ironic. Kind of says something for weed there in the sense where maybe it's not as bad as the majority of some people think.
Yes. No, that's a good point. That's a good point. So so okay, you do believe it is a real, it's not a bio warfare, this COVID-19, the coronavirus.
Yeah, well, I think my theory of how it started is that they were selling sort of the animals from that
From
test
the wet
facility.
markets. From the
No, no,
test
from the
facility.
test facility. I think somebody was backdoor dealing, and
There's a black market.
they got the wrong batch of of animals that they were doing these tests on. Maybe they were ones that they were selling ones that normally haven't been tested upon yet, and they give the security guard gives those to the wet market and makes a few extra bucks. And they gave the wrong ones, in which case it spread through the wet market like wildfire. But
Right. What I
and
can't
then
comprehend though is that it travels thousands and thousands of miles across continent, and
mm,
it's like the least likely nursing home in Stony Creek or Haldimand, Ontario. Like, how did
yeah,
they get infested with it? You know what I mean? It's
yes,
you're so far removed. Like, not. It's like, what's the relationship? You didn't have anyone necessarily come from the Wuhan city province, travel to Canada, and enter into like these physical places that have it. So I just don't understand how it's traveling like that, right?
and
But yes, I have seen
apparently you
the
can do
contagion, and I could see
yeah,
how it would happen.
yes, but apparently they've done testing now, and they can test where from your antibodies and things where the virus has came from.
Oh, okay.
So they're saying that the bulk of the cases in the U.S. and North America are actually people who traveled to, say, Wuhan, or somebody they came in contact with somebody from there in Europe, and then came from Europe to here. And somehow, I don't know how that's possible, but they can test that and find out the origin of where it came from
But then
that way.
and if you're paying attention to other types of news, like even World Health Organization, at least initially, and there's a lot of controversy around them,
Mm,
is that they were reporting that it could not be contracted through airborne, at least initially,
yes,
right? And they got a lot of
initially.
heat from the Chinese for being like, do not report that, not as of
Mm,
yet, right? Like, so there's a lot of information that's and you have to pick and choose what you believe. And,
yes.
like people are saying like masks are worthless with
Mm,
respect to preventative measures. Yet, okay, our healthcare professionals wear them. Why is there uh, a backstock or like why is there such a shortage of 3M N95
yes,
masks or what have you,
exactly.
right? Like, why is there a shortage? So it's you have to pick and choose what you believe. You'll see people on social that like dissing someone that goes to the supermarket with a mask. Yet it's like, like
Yeah,
when is better safe than sorry, apply, right?
yeah.
And when what do you choose to believe?
I believe I've been wearing my full 7500 series 3M
Mm-hmm.
respirator anytime I'm in a public space.
And for those who don't know, that looks like a full tilt gas mask, right? Like
Yes,
the
yes,
chambers on each side, like.
yeah. I've actually got one upstairs.
Okay, I think
Um,
you've shown it to me.
yeah, but
Yeah.
it's a pretty interesting thing. But anyways, I've been wearing that anytime I've been in a public space, and yeah,
Can you
it's
reuse it? Like,
yes, it's
do you change the
reusable. The
filters?
filters the filters are designed for they're P100 NOsh filters. They're 100%
What's it called again?
reusable. It's a 3M
It took
uh,
the gold standard in
7500 series mask.
Okay, 3M 7500.
Yes,
Oh, respirator.
there you go.
Yeah, I want to see what this baby looks like. Oh, that.
Yes.
Is
So
this
the one with the pink filters on it there is basically the same setup as I got. So those filters that are on there do not have a limit for airborne particles when it comes to, say, respiratory viruses and stuff. So
Oh,
lots of
wow.
times if you're wearing those in a workspace like where I work, there's a time limit where you can, their filters are good for a certain amount of exposure, and then you have to change them. Whereas with healthcare workers and everything else, they can wear these masks and, you know, disinfect them, wipe them down. I actually have it right here. My handy
Oh,
assistant
nice.
brought it. So it's very easy to wear, and you just put it on. It's comfortable,
Yeah.
and it's 100% reusable. You just clean it after use. You use a
Are the
wipe
filters
down.
covered or are they exposed like that?
So
Like, is there another cover that goes over that?
no, this is the filter, and
Oh, okay.
it's so
Right on.
so you have a valve inside of there that breathes out and breathes in through the filters. Um, so the thing with this that is kind of more dangerous for everybody else compared to an N95 or something is that this exhaust port here just vents atmospherically, whereas a N95 respirator is more protecting other people. And same thing with surgical masks. That's what they're designed for. They're not designed to protect the surgeon. They're designed so that way none of their saliva or whatever falls into the patient's wound.
Right.
Which is a point to bring up. In Denmark, you have a mandatory mask if you're outside of your residence. You have to wear one,
Oh, wow.
and that's
Yeah.
stopping. They have very low numbers, and it's stopping things like you have the mask on, and if you sneeze or if you cough, it doesn't travel. It stays on you, and so yes, you can still touch something and you know, touch your face, contract it, but because of the way this virus works and how deadly it is airborne wise, and how it affects your respiratory system so bad that wearing a homemade mask, and there's a lot of people making those, if we
Yeah.
as a
Out of
culture in
slots or out of
Canada,
fabric. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
Yep.
if we as a culture as Canada just said, hey, you know, for the time being, we're going to have to wear these masks until we get this under control. The amount of social distancing and work closures and things would, you be able to eliminate that and keep things open and running, because you'd have such a high, you know, protection rate that you wouldn't have to worry about as much of a shutdown as we have, and then you'd have a less impact on the economy and everything.
Yeah.
But it seems as a culture, like I wear it, so it's funny, I wear it and people kind of look at me, and I kind of look crazy. So they you know, they kind of say things under their breath about, you know, that necessary and things like that, and I kind of just give them the look, right? And my wife actually went to the grocery store with it on. She has one as
Yeah.
well,
Good.
and people were rude. Like, people are rude normally, and they're being extra rude. Uh, and it's funny, given that she's a woman, that they're rude to her in the grocery store. They're kind of, there's arrows in the aisles on which way you're supposed to go, and people are
Okay.
not obeying those, and people are sort of pushing each other out of the way to grab things, and she had to deal with that kind of stuff. So it's interesting. I go grocery shopping and do all that stuff now myself, because it's just, for her, it's a stressful experience, and
Yeah.
people, you think they'd be nice to a woman given the day and age that we're in, but it tends to be the
Bring
opposite,
the
it seems,
worst. Sometimes it
with
brings
her.
out the worst. Like, you see people fighting over early
Yeah,
toilet paper, and you're like, well, like, that's nonsensical. I'm like,
yeah.
of all things
Get
to
a
be purchased,
bidet, order on Amazon, you get the little squirter, and
and you're
you're
good.
fine, you're good.
Very yeah. Well, that you had taken preventative measures earlier, and you're taking it to a more intense level, which I can't disagree with. So let me ask you the next question. What are your thoughts on returning back to some kind of normacy and allowing people to go back to work sooner than later, or are we not there yet?
I
I
don't.
just feel like people are just getting antsy now, and they're like
Yeah.
using every reason to go back. And you can pull numbers and validate anything, but I think
Mm,
ultimately at the end of the day, I've shared this opinion, and it's not to say that I support it, but I think the business interests are going to overcome the general public health interests, in that, like, I can already tell and see, like, the United States and President Trump had released a different phase program to start letting certain businesses go back and so on, and expand on that essential services list.
mhm.
And they want to do it, like, in May, um,
Yep.
middle of May, and they seem to have shut down later, and they're going to go back earlier. And you know what, it leads to, because their economy was thriving before,
Yeah.
and I get that, like, you can't keep everybody in businesses on the sidelines, because you can't possibly finance everything with grants and
Exactly.
emergency programs, because the debt's going to climb. And already I'd heard, 1 in 10 restaurants are kaput. They're not even going to go
Yeah.
back to operating, and who knows how many other businesses
Yeah.
are
The
done.
small business
They still have to pay
people.
leases, right? They still have to pay. They still have expenditures
Oh
all
yeah.
while this is going on, and they can't offer the products and services. So I have a feeling that that's going to be the lead, even though it shouldn't be.
Hmm.
But at the
Well,
end of
the
the day,
economic fallout, as you know, it comes with the stocks and people's
Mhm.
personal pocketbooks, and a lot of people they invest in stocks for retirement, and
Yeah,
and
right.
if they lose their job, and when I was at the grocery store this week, a guy didn't have any money for groceries beside me, and I felt really bad about it, but in the same sense, I have to look out for myself and my family and whatnot. But the people are going to, if they start losing their jobs and their houses and their money, there's also a trend in, you know, violence,
Yeah,
suicide, that type of thing that happens when the economy collapses. And that has a death toll and a percentage, a factor in itself too.
right.
So you don't want it to get too out of hand. Uh, and right now, the joblessness rate in Canada is above what the recession was, like well above the recession in 2008.
Already above. Okay.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Oh,
and
now, yeah, of course, of course.
yeah, because of the amount of people that have been shut down. But
Right.
then once everything gets up and running, we've been shut down for a couple months, so maybe people could have deferred their mortgage or worked with their landlord to say, hey, listen, you know, I can't afford rent right now, but it's not like you can go rent this place out to somebody else because there's nobody opening businesses right now.
Right.
Maybe people are giving breaks to small businesses that way, and they're kind of bringing out the greater good in people and just saying, okay, we'll get through this month, maybe next month. But if this stretches on for a period of longer than 90 days, let's say, uh, the landlords are going to start feeling the pinch, in which case they're not going to be able to turn a blind eye or sort of be the helpful guy. They're going to have to start looking for their money, and it could cause a major economic crash because of this. And
Mm.
that's what I think is the biggest scare right now for a lot of people, and that's why a lot of people want to get back to work, is because maybe they've been on employment insurance for the past few weeks, and uh, I was on it when I was on paternity leave not long ago, and my work thankfully tops me up when
Okay.
you're on that leave. But
Mhm.
as a person who makes more than uh, you know
Average.
what they give you for EI, I qualified for the maximum amount, which is 50%. I don't know. It was quite a
It's
big
still
hit
a huge drop. Yeah, of course.
compared to what I make every week,
Uh-huh.
and a lot of other people that are middle class, like it's affecting affecting everybody across the board. It's not just, you know, the people who are are working at, you know, restaurants and stuff like that. Because some of those places they're still working, like McDonald's, they still have the drive-through open, and you know they're keeping maybe a core set of employees for the time being. So, but the restaurants and the people who have been listed as non-essential, that's who it's affecting, and I really hope it doesn't go on for much longer. For, you know, I have friends that are in that situation, and you know, I don't know what their personal finances are like, but I know a lot of people, you know, 3 months with living on not much income, it can really put a damper in you. You know, you
Yeah,
have to dip into savings
right.
and
If they
or
have,
that type of thing, right?
yeah, exactly. I read an article, I think when was it stated, but it was from investmentexecutive.com, titled is Majority of Canadians Living Paycheck to Paycheck. In a survey taken, 53% of Canadians are living paycheck to paycheck. 25% of those, 1 in 4, are overwhelmingly in debt, and more than a quarter, that's 27%, don't even have enough for their daily needs. So, you know, if that was
Yeah.
in a time when they were employed, like, how do you
Yes.
think this is going to impact someone that is on an EI or the emergency relief benefits, et cetera?
Yeah.
So that's why I feel like the impatience, aside from being at home and not, it's not even being at home, because there's a lot of positives to being with family, home cooked
Oh,
meals, exercising more, you know, that kind of thing, being with your children when you don't have that opportunity to, let's say. But um, it's just the fact that your freedom gets cut off, and you can't go, you can't even do parks, you can't do trails. You like doing
yeah.
trails, you like you enjoy biking, cycling,
Hmm.
so you can't even do that. And I think that psychologically is such a big hit too. So
It is very frustrating. And you know, a lot like myself, it's funny, like Joe Rogan was talking about how he, being a comedian, other people who travel for work, like I travel for work as well, right? And you know, anywhere between 35 and, you know, 40% of the year, I and up to 50% of the year, I could be gone, you know, out of country, away from my family. That type of stuff has been shut right down. So there's no
right,
longer the stress or the anxiety and dealing with, oh, you know, I have this trip to a country coming up to, and you know, that's been put on halt right now, which is
right.
nice because you're for the foreseeable future, you're home with your family, and you're not dealing with being gone. So kind of helps out that way as well. But
I think if you let me share a little bit of some thoughts about what's going to happen in the future, because you know, certainly we'll return to some kind of you know, we'll be out of lockdown and to some normalcy. But I do think forever society will be changed in that, you know, you're going to have businesses that come back. We're going to experience a depression, not just a recession. You're going to have businesses that are tight, and they just are going to have to operate under distress. Like, I mean, they're not only going to be working for profit, they're going to be working to pay off debts. And I think
yeah.
that means more people will be able to work from home.
Yep.
I think businesses are going to take advantage of that. They're like, why do I have this building? I
Hmm.
don't have to have people here. People are working from home, and at least for the time being, we can move forward and still execute on, you know, their day to day. I
Hmm.
think the mortgages and moving forward, credit and lending is going to be so much tighter, because when you talk about forbearance and people deferring mortgages and stuff like that, it's important to know what that really costs you when you do it. But
Yes.
with the prior to, you know, when Canada, we don't drop the overnight lending rate. Like, it takes
Yeah.
months. You know, that they have the schedule of announcement by the Bank of Canada
Hmm.
a year in advance, and people speculate all the time. But they'll do quarter point at a time. When they were doing emergency ones and one on a Sunday night, and it's down to 25.25%. I mean,
Yeah.
and then you've got countries like Germany and Japan with negative interest rates.
Yeah.
Lending is going to be so much harder. Like refinance rules recently got changed up. When this first happened, rates dropped like crazy. So so many applications for refinances and purchases came in that the banks had to stop because they were so concerned that they didn't even have the money to lend out if they ever, if they even approved all of these applications, right?
Jeez,
So they
that's
stopped them.
crazy.
It crashed the system. It was crazy. So if you think about it like that, like if you have major contraction, businesses are working already on a loss. Lending is going to be more difficult. Businesses are going to be shut down altogether. Like there's very few that really will come out of this with any kind of like, profit, like they'll be able to carry
Yeah.
on as usual. um, and you think about like even schooling, will we move more to less days in school eventually and maybe more online teaching and stuff like, because I think ultimately at the end of the day, we're going to see some revolutionary changes in the
We're
way.
going to have to reevaluate our culture from this, I think for sure.
Yeah.
There's the building that I worked in last year. I did a stint with process engineering, and it's a large building that our company owns, and all of those people, plus a majority of the other office staff, are all working from home.
Mm-hmm.
And I think even a company that is my size is looking at that like, hey, I don't have to pay hydro, heat.
Yeah.
These people, we can just say you can work at home from now on. You're non-essential.
Right.
Like you're an essential part of this business, but you don't need to be at work every day.
Mm-hmm. And I
Even if
think,
it's just
yeah.
to come to work for big meetings, okay, we're having our quarterly meeting, and you come in and do that. But for the day to day, I
Right.
think a lot of companies are going to start reevaluating what they're going to do.
Yeah. The
With
mode of
that.
operation moving forward is going to be completely different, I think, as well. We found that healthcare can be ill prepared, not necessarily here, but certain areas, certain sections. Actually, I mentioned this on the last podcast that Alberta, who's not necessarily in line with our federal leadership, taken upon themselves to take extra measures, and it's paid off for them. And we give them a lot of credit because I do know that Premier Rob Ford announced, I believe on Friday it was, or Thursday, that Alberta had been sharing supplies and ventilators because they've been able to stop the curve of spread in Alberta, at least for the time being. So, I mean, they could have easily been like, righteous in the sense that we were ahead and went on our own device and took matters in our own hands and shut things down a lot sooner. And then now they had a surplus of supplies. They could easily been like, well, we were right, you were wrong. We're just going to hold it. But they see this as a humanitarian effort, and it's not just a countrywide, like, it's a human thing. So I think by and large too, we're going to be looking at like if Italy and Spain and places like that serve as examples. And I've been saying this all along, is the medical sector and retirement, we're just not prepared for the baby boomers, as they age, right?
That's funny you say that, because I've been thinking about that as well. Like they're getting up there, and nursing homes, retirement residences, and the healthcare system, I think they were behind the curve with supplies and beds and everything when it comes to them, because unfortunately we don't live forever and we have an expiry date. And as the general population of baby boomers gets towards that age, where the average age in Canada, for males is 84 or something, and women is in the higher 80s of some sort like that. But as they get closer to that age, they're going to need more care per capita per year, and that's not without a pandemic.
That's
That's
it. Yeah. This is
seasonal
kind of
flu.
like a glimpse. It's a glimpse of it, right?
So say the seasonal flu is 1%, right, or less than 1% mortality rate. But as our population gets to be like Italy, and say if the seasonal flu is now turns into a problem like the coronavirus, because our population is so old, are we going to shut everything down again because the baby boomers are getting up there and they're old, and that, are we going to go through this again? or are we going to learn from our mistakes and stop getting medicine produced in China? You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
make our own, like it comes to be a cost of doing business. Okay, if it's going to cost us this much to stockpile respirators and ventilators and hospital beds and that type of thing, then so be it. Because we, as a country, and the way our healthcare system works is it's a public health system, and it needs to be able to combat and take care of its people. So you can't get to the stage like we're in Italy, where we're saying, you're getting close to 80. There's a 40-year-old guy over here. He's got a wife and kids. So we're going to pull this ventilator out on the 80-year-old and
Yeah.
give it to the 40-year-old. And
Terrible. Yeah.
hopefully you pull through. If not, I guess you die. And how do you put a price on
Human life.
that?
Yeah. How do you put a criteria on who gets to live and who gets to carry move on? It's
Yeah.
unfortunate, but it is a glimpse, and it's a sobering reality. And I think, in addition to that, culture will change in that even the way we do shopping, if it means more online delivery shopping and pickup and less people in restaurants, because like sporting events, you canceled all the major sports so far. Football is, still a ways away, but I'm not hopeful that it will be on time. But the thing is, even if it is on time, how you put 80,000 people in one location anymore? Right. So you're going
Mm-hmm.
to see changes like that. I think like the social distancing will somewhat stay overall. And like I said, could we be seeing kids and workers spending more time at home and doing more virtual things? I think, unfortunately, that's going to create a disconnect, and interpersonal relationships will take a change. And the reality is, like, businesses will get used to delivering services like real estate, for instance. And it's very difficult right now to both
Yeah.
show and purchase homes, because we have so many, like, there's questionnaires, there's cleaning supplies that have to be provided. Sometimes we we'll only deal with only absolute serious, most serious case scenarios. I mean, sometimes you have to put it in an offer. You have to make an offer to see the house now.
Yeah.
Can you imagine that? Like,
Really.
and when they started talking about different services in the States that were coming out, the iBuyer services, like, believe it or not, they were already programs that allowed for folks to do listing searches online, see the house virtually at most, like sight unseen, and make offers straight
Make
up.
an offer, not seeing who the neighbor is, or whatever, right?
Like, I mean, I've never done that, and I've never been a part of that. You might hear about someone doing it, but it's such a one-off situation that it's like, I just can't imagine the industry as a whole going to that. But I do think that part of it will be adopted from this time forward, because now if someone wants to see a property, like, you've got to do like they call it virtual tours. I've always done virtual tours, but like, you might go in and do like a virtual open house where you're the only one there and you just do it by camera, etc. But
Sure.
I
Put
mean,
on the VR goggles.
yeah, but that's just like, you can't take out that human element. Like, you can't replace being there.
Oh, the smells, and I mean, that's, to me, when I was looking at houses, some houses you walk in, you're like, oh, like, no,
Right.
like you
That's
instantly walk in, and somebody's smoked in it, or they've had a wet dog in there or something. And
yes. Yeah.
you
But
go into the one
I
house and it
wonder.
smells like warm apple pie, and you're like, oh yeah, I could live here.
There it is. Well, I wonder how many other industries will be impacted in that same manner. But
I
I
think
think
it'll
there's
be a new normal for a while, which is shocking. How long is it going to be till you go up and hug your buddy or shake his hand or
if you ever do
whatever,
that
right?
again. Yeah.
Yeah, that there's always going to be the crazies that'll, as soon as they lift any type of ban, they'll be lined up at Barney's or whatever at the bars downtown London, and they'll be just in the lineup outside waiting to go by the bouncer, and the bouncer will have a little temp gun, and he's gonna shine it at your
There you
forehead,
go.
and
Yeah.
you're good to go. And
Easy.
imagine all the corny jokes about being too hot, and Yeah, I don't know. It'll be
Well, do you remember traveling before
interesting
there
thing.
was additional security measures?
No, because I'm a millennial, and
So,
my
okay.
parents, we didn't travel as a kid. Well, I shouldn't say that. We went to the U.S. a lot, Florida and whatnot, but
Uh-huh.
and you used to just go across the border, and it wasn't there'd be a lineup, but it wasn't any
Not the
big
way it
deal.
is now. All right.
But then now, since 9/11 happened, that those measures didn't change. Like they changed, like they grew, but they never went back to sort of the
Right.
normalcy of what it was before. That's the fear here, as a lot of people are talking about, is the civil liberties.
Right.
You know, what's going to stay, what's going to stick here,
Right. Yeah,
and
it's a traditional process that's going to impede on you and your lifestyle. And that was the question that was posed to Bill Gates, is because the controversy is not only, okay, he can, he's always, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation is always mandated to provide vaccines to like the poorest of countries.
yeah,
And now, it's like they're saying that the vaccines, are they going to, will you be obligated to have them, and will they include microchipping?
yeah, that's
So
the
that
all
was
the
the talk about
conspiracy
that, right? So
about that. I don't really. I like to entertain those ideas sometimes, and you know, I like to look into different conspiracy theories, and because some of the, like Epstein, like did he kill himself or not, like, and
yeah,
all those things, like there's some of the stuff that's almost too crazy, like you're like, oh, that's a conspiracy theory, I believe. And then the other stuff, like 5G towers creating coronavirus, like
yeah,
you're like, okay. I saw a meme of Gary Busey today doing his face,
yeah.
and it was like, this is the type of MF that was believing the coronavirus was
Before.
caused by 5G towers. But
Did you see the list of CEOs that resigned during the course of the year last year? The list
no,
is like insane, and the
for what
notoriety
for
of
what
companies.
reason?
Well, probably this, because they foresaw or were forewarned about the economic downfall coming up in the new year. You know what I mean? Like,
Really?
anyways, if you want to put two and two together,
That's
it's 100%
that's
the
kind
truth.
of weird. Yeah,
Yeah,
I
including
haven't looked into that.
Google. Like, it was the craziest. Uh,
Really,
right across the
a
board.
high turnover rate right
Yeah,
across the
all
board.
resigned, right? And it's like, what's going on here? It's like, insider trading. They got the heads up on something. So,
That's sketchy. I always thought and talked about, you know, a lot of people tend to, because the economy's growing, like maybe they're living a little bit beyond their means, right? And because it's always growing, their investments are growing. So, maybe they're a little bit behind the curve right now, but in 5 years' time, they'll be, in line with where they want to be, and things. And I'm personally more of a very cautious with my money. Like I'm more of a GIC guy, and I really, if I have a dollar, I'd rather have a dollar in the account type thing, and not risk the stock market or anything. And that's sort of just how I was raised. My grandmother worked in the bank for a long time
mhm.
and in the financial industry, and she always drilled that into my head. And she seemed to do fairly well for herself, her and my grandfather, and so I kind of just took that model and ran with it ever since I was a kid.
Mhm.
I'd have my money, and I would still spend, but I would also make sure that I had some money for a rainy day, as they always say. And I think a big part of our culture kind of needs to keep that in the back of their head now. And this is a huge wake up call for a lot of people, like, because they always say, your grandmother or your parents, put your jacket on,
Yeah,
save money for a rainy day.
yeah.
And they're always like, yeah, yeah, ma, like whatever, I look good, I'm going to the bar, like what, and
Yeah.
it's not,
You get what you didn't
now
appreciate the lesson at
you've
the
gotten
time.
caught with that right hook, and
Yep.
a lot of people have, and they're like, oh, like that's real. Like,
Yeah, this is true. But I mean, like, it matters, money matters, you know, it's such a, like, a personal thing, from religion to politics to
oh, for sure.
exercise, like whatever it is, like your
Yeah.
philosophies are so unique to your own, that, and money, especially for Canadians, is especially, um, it kept confidential, you know, has very conservative
Yes.
views about it here. So it's like,
Yeah.
even if you hear something that's going on that could make you some money, like, the immediate skepticism it's insane. So,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
yeah, then there's always the free spenders, and what are you going to do about that anyway? So,
Is what it is, right? You can't, you just, you just hope that people you know and love are, you know, I mean, obviously you're looking out for each other and whatnot, but you just hope they're financially prepared for that type of thing. You don't
yeah,
want to ever see somebody you know struggle that way, right?
no,
But
definitely not. But there are people out there now, and you know what? There's a lot of pride out there too, and they'll never let you know it, right?
yeah,
Just like
that's true.
there's a lot of wealthy people out there that you don't even know what they have or amassed, and they look
Yeah,
just like you and I, and it's like you wouldn't even know.
yeah,
So I just think that's under the cloak of Canadians being, like I said, like keeping their cards close to their vest. We're unlike Americans, I think, in that sense.
yeah. Yeah, they like to flaunt every dollar. If they got a dollar, they want to look like they got two.
Well, that's it, exactly. But I think, irrespective, you're never going to stop those people from doing that anyway.
That's true.
It, and there's people, yeah, like you said, it's the ones that are in trouble that don't have it and act
Mm-hmm.
that lifestyle, or
Yeah,
go into debt to have it. You know what I mean? Like, I think that's what you're saying. Because, like I said, I think all that lending and everything is going to be everything that you could achieve before on a normal level of output and effort. I think is going to take 2 to 3 times to 5 times effort to get the same thing moving forward. I
yeah,
just have this feeling about that, and I feel like this whole time that, we're stuck in isolation and lockdown. I mean, it's, who knows? Is China buying up the stock market? Like,
yeah,
someone's making moves, and it's like all this time that they have to do it while we're sitting back. Unfortunately, I just get an uneasy feeling, and I think, 2020 for a lot of people was, because of the 2020, hindsight vision, and like seeing into the future, and planning and goal
yeah.
setting.
My company had a big thing. It was a
Sure.
called Vision 2020, and this was
Right.
developed. I think it was developed around 2014. They kind of came out with that
Yeah.
5-year outlook, right?
Right.
And they had this slogan, Vision 2020, and
And then
everything. But
it barely lasted 3 months, and everybody got kicked in the ass. And now it's like you can't wait till 2021 and maybe 2022 even. So it's
yeah,
crazy. But one set of advice that I heard, just the other day, is that, basically, and I do believe this to be true, is that the economics situation, the situation going on, the environment around you now, uh, it was not the dictator of your economic situation right now going into it, right? So it's
yes,
important to adopt a positive attitude moving forward, and figure out, using this time, to figure out what it is, the skills, or rearrange your priorities, or goal set, or whatever. Because, moving forward, you get to choose how you react to this,
yes,
right? And, so long as we keep hopeful and positive, because once you give up hope, I do know that it's like,
yeah.
like,
It's
what are
not
you going
good.
to do if you become apathetic, not care? Like, you're not going to be better off. So we have no
Hmm.
choice. As long as there's time on the clock, I mean, you got to do the best with what you got. And, I think coming out of this, it's just everybody's got to get hard back into work, just to maintain what they have, and push through. And if you want more than that, you're gonna have to work harder.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. One of the things I've always said, and maybe it's conspiracy theory, maybe I believe in, but it seems certain government, like, I'm a personally, I always vote. conservative, and but I might be a more middle center type person if on a lot of issues. But I find the world is so left that I have to vote right just to kind of keep things in check.
Right.
And with our government, raising the minimum wage, kind of seems the middle class always seems to
Shrink.
feel the biggest pinch, and
Yeah.
it seems to be, you're making less money. They bounce up the minimum wage. Well, then milk and gas and everything goes up because the minimum wage is now higher, and my dollar doesn't go as far as it once did. And now for people that want to do an income property or investing and everything, it's like you said, it's going to be harder to get money. It's going to be harder to grow your personal portfolio. And I think, whether it's conspiracy or theory or not, but I find that the government in power now tends to escalate that a bit more than what I'd like, and
make it more difficult. Yeah.
make it more difficult for
that's
the
what I'm
average
saying.
Joe to make a buck.
Yeah, if you're reading between the lines, I mean, that's, the things that I've been able to do, I won't be able to do as easily. I wouldn't even say easily.
Yeah.
Like you just like, it would take more time and more resources, right?
More thought and more personal stress related to the issue, because you're sticking your neck out a bit more than you would have before, type of thing, right?
Sure.
And
but I mean, like, that's where I say, like, you have to choose and adopt the attitude that you're going to find a different way to do it. And like already, like this, shifting the video, because I can't have regular podcasts with you guys visiting the studio, and I can't meet with Chris, and we can't go to our studio and so on. Like, it forced us to break out of our shell and adopt like a different medium, like, so coming on to the video here and things. So the same thing goes true and holds true for whatever it is, your plans are, if they're financially, personally, health wise. Like, gyms are closed, and I know a lot of people are feeling it because they don't have the luxury of an at-home gym or whatever. But I mean, like, it just goes back to, how did people do it back in the day when there were no gyms and so on?
Exactly.
Like, you have to adapt, and you have to remain hopeful. And I think it's a true test, that it's a sign that if someone is saying, okay, if you still want it, but you've got to work harder just to get a little bit now, where, like before you would get this, it would be a 1-to-1 ratio. Now it's a 10-to-1. It's questioning whether you really want to. And I think if you break through and still hit those goals, it will be not just more rewarding, but I think it wipes out competition. Markets like this wipe out competition. And I heard another great phrase the other day, is never waste a good crisis. Never waste a crisis.
Oh yeah.
This
I
is
was
where
thinking
people
about
are
that at the beginning.
Yeah, people are expanding their market share of whatever it is.
Because I was in a state where I thought, I think I'm sort of financially stable and everything, and I'm still working and everything. I was like, oh, like, how can at the beginning I was really thinking of how I can make a profit. Okay. And I don't want to like make a profit on other people's hardships or anything, right? But in the same sense, I'm in a position where I could, maybe I want to buy an income property and do it that way, right? And with, say, interest rates going down, or if the housing market has just been so hot and booming for so long, if it goes into a cool down for a little bit, and it's more of a buyer's market, where you can sort of buy a place that before you might have had to give over asking, or there was multiple offers. Maybe it's oh, hey, I can go in at asking and make a decent place and sort of flip this, and then maybe there'll be a higher percentage of people renting, so then you'll actually end up with more of a market for that, right? Because maybe some of the people that were saving for a house or that down payment they're renting, and then now they they have to dip into those savings to keep their place that they get their rental or whatever they got going on now, right? So there's multiple angles from it, and there's also the saying, never try to catch a falling knife. And in the same sense, where a lot of guys were at work were buying different stocks, they're like, oh, like it's hitting rock bottom today, like I bought this, and because the government's got to bail out Air Canada, like Canada's in the name. And I'm like, no, I don't think they got to do anything. Like they'll let that sink and then rebrand it a different name or something. It's not they're, unless they have a financial stake in it, which maybe they do. I'm not that well versed in Air Canada or stocks, but it's interesting to see what'll happen and who will gain from this. It's always the rich, the top echelon that'll always gain from this. But it'll be interesting to see how the average Joe can maybe take this opportunity and see what they did wrong, change their habits, and then come back even stronger and smarter from this.
Yeah, they say what when there's blood in the streets, right? But that's easier said than done when people say go against your instinct to be buying when there's turmoil in the markets, both with stocks and real estate. But I think the reality is, like, we're seeing it's a systematic, like you were saying before, like you don't want to suggest conspiracy like with the government or what have you, but it seems like the rich are just solidifying their positions because they're making it more and more difficult for a middle class, if you believe there's a middle class, really. That it's just gonna, like I said, it's gonna get harder in access to money and lending unless you're like overloaded in cash, which I believe not many people are really. All these things that you feel like you can do, like, okay, suppose the markets are more available and you have less competition and housing is like a little bit more reasonable. But then if you're able to get a property, it's not like you would think that you'd get more renters. You think you could sell it at a profit, but something's got to give. The formula as we know it is not going to be that simple. Because otherwise, I think you would see, you'd see a rush of everyone doing it. And I talked with friends leading up to the crash in the markets the last couple of weeks, and they try to dabble in this and that. And I'm like, one day it's up, the next day, and it just wasn't, they're trying to catch it on the upswing and it was just too volatile. And then they just gave up on it. And that's a classic example of what I'm talking about. Is you would think by this advice that's given, run into the markets when things are low. I think this thing is, because it's so unprecedented, it's not going to follow the rules of what like a crash in the market.
A traditional recession, like say in 2008 or whatever. I'm not up on economics, but they're saying that there's like a V-shaped recession.
V, W, L.
W, L. Well, L to me is a straight up depression to me, but because it doesn't really ever come back, right? Or if it does, it's a very long one. Yeah. Long, and then that can also have a further downturn because of it, at least from what I was reading.
No, but we played that on the last podcast, which we're releasing tomorrow. And a snippet, I believe, from Bloomberg. Actually, this guy explained it very well, like the different as it relates to letters, the W, V, etc. But I think we're underestimating the economic devastation that is going on right now. And I think, like I said, that's why I think people will be in a hurry to get back sooner than later, irrespective of the numbers come, if that's May or June. And okay, so be it. There's going to be pent up demand. I'll tell you, like I believe in the real estate market, we're going to have like a huge surge. But immediately after that, when lending again, it tightens up because they're losing money on the variable rates. They've had to drop the variable rates because of the overnight lending rate and the bonds. So they're losing money. They're not collecting as much on those who have variable rate mortgages. And then in addition to that, you have all the people that went for the deferrals. So, when that impacts, they're not in any rush to lower rates anymore, and they're not in any
Mhm.
rush to lend more money because it's more volatile. It's less of a slam dunk for them. It's less safe for them.
Yep.
And packaging these mortgages and selling them, it's just like the application process, I can tell you, is going to change, and they're pretty much not going to underwrite anything and approve mortgages unless it's like a slam dunk and the guy's got a ton of cash. And who has that right now?
Yeah.
So I think we're going to see the surge for the people who needed to buy, who just waited. And then eventually it's just going to like slow right down. And then we're going to see, I don't ever think necessarily like the prices are going to crash, because people are not going to give their houses up.
No.
You know what I mean? Whatever you have, you're going to stay in it for the long run if you think you can't
Yeah.
sell it. And people will put off their moves, but maybe there'll be a small tick down. But unless there's major rule changes, it's going to be crazy.
Yeah. I think it'll be, and I kind of thought this might happen just eventually, is like when we were first looking for our houses, all the people were going in and it'd be multiple offers and
Mhm.
people would over asking.
Mhm.
And I figured
Which
that
was
eventually,
happening. It was already happening in January, February, March,
yeah.
February of this year. Yeah.
And it seemed to be continuing. Like we bought our place like 5 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
and it was happening then, right? And I think this will just cool that down. Like I believe you. I don't believe that the housing prices will actually go down or anything like that. You might just see the availability to purchase. You're not facing as much competition,
Right.
maybe.
Yeah, I think we're headed towards renters. How do you even say this? Society. I mean, already, like if you look at a Toronto, because of the scope and scale of it and affordability, they were already at a 45-55 ratio. We're going to
Wow.
see like a 60-40, maybe even 70% of adults going into renting, because it's older people will not relinquish their property. Like even the baby
Yeah.
boomers, like my wife's grandmother was in her 90s and she stayed
Yeah.
in her 2.5-story Victorian home.
Yeah.
So like, you think my mom and my mother-in-law are going to sell their place? They're in their later mid 60s and 70s. They're not giving their places up. So like baby boomers, like you would think, just like you're saying, like, okay, economy this, prices should be affordable, I can do this. Well, it depends on human nature. And right now, like their values are, especially now after a contraction like this, they're not going to want to give anything up, because where the hell are they going to go? Right.
Yes.
Like the
Exactly.
home means so much more than money to them as well. So unless, but then they say the biggest generational transfer of wealth is going to be from the baby boomers to their kids. Who knows? Add this to the mix now, and it's like,
Yeah. But then again, like you have you get that influx of money, and people that have never been smart with their money, that
what are they going to do
rented
with
their
it?
whole life. What are they going to just go buy 2 jet skis and a whole bunch of weed? And
I believe
I
that.
don't know.
I don't even think that when those kids have the transfer of wealth, let's say they get an inheritance, they're not even going to value or care for the property or buy a house themselves. They may be very happy renting or living where they do, and they'll be like, because like I said, someone like yourself, a millennial, and even younger, they're going to grow up with this, and they're only going to see the negatives having to do with it. And ownership is so out of reach for them. But by the time they come into some money, they'll be like, they will value it more than wanting to give it away and pay a mortgage. They're like, the hell with that. I like my freedoms. I like being able to travel. I think the younger generation won't be in careers. They'll just move from different jobs, well-paying jobs, but they'll move multiple times, because we've become that. Like, I don't have an iPhone. Like, actually, I had an iPhone for 5 or 6 years before I upgraded.
Yeah.
I lease my vehicle, so I get a new one every 3 to 4 years. Younger people are going to be more like more like that than even me. They're going to want,
Yeah, well, it seems they're doing the ride sharing and like that type of
total
thing, right?
flexibility, not be tied down, like polyamorous relationships and all, like the stuff that you hear. People are just
Mhm.
going to want multiple hookup partners. They're going to
Yeah.
change their vehicles all the time if they have one. They're going to move all the time, and they're going to change their jobs all the time, because we are, even like our interests, like our attention span is less
Mhm.
too. It's like Instagram stories, 15 seconds or less, I'm out.
Yeah,
I can
I
barely
know.
watch a movie for 90 minutes now.
Yeah. It's the attention span is not there for a lot of
So
people.
yeah, and I do think the time that we're in will change society, and then that will further influence the younger generation. That's what is our sons, how are they going to grow up? You know what I
Yeah.
mean? We can't even imagine. Like, if you ask our parents in the 80s and the 90s, did you ever imagine the internet and the impact that that could have?
Yeah,
You
I
know,
know.
like, they could never dream of a Google or a Netflix or Apple.
Telling them that we'd be doing this right now.
Yeah,
Like
exactly.
are
Or
you kidding me? This is
like,
Star Trek?
I remember I was listening to a guy talk to his mom, who was a computer programmer, and he said to her, like, this is an iPhone, and she
Mhm.
like knows nothing about. She's a computer programmer, well versed in computers, but
Yep.
he's like, listen, look at the amazingness of this device, and he's like, think of any song that you want to hear. And she named a song, and then he played it, and she was like, what the hell? Like, is you know
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
anything you want to see, anything you want to listen to, anything you want to read about at the touch of a screen, right? So it'll be interesting. I still look forward to it. I hope doing shows like this and talking about it and having a platform for it inspires to watch us and listen to us.
Yeah.
It certainly keeps me on my game, keeping up to the topical news, but how can you not? But I gotta say, like, there's just a saturation,
Oh,
COVID-19, and most of it's like so depressing. So
it is. Like some of the stuff you just gotta I was staying on the graphs and the trends and refreshing every day, multiple times a day to see the deaths
yeah,
and everything, right? And
you
I'm
gotta
like,
stop, right?
whoa, I gotta pump the brakes here. This I wasn't doing this before. So then I did a big thing where I got rid of like social media off my phone and
Yeah.
and did a whole like cleanse. And then it was like anytime I'm watching TV, I could be, on my stationary bike and or I can be working out. I'm not going to pay attention to anything. And then, people would start talking at work. Oh, like, do you see the numbers today? And then all of a sudden I heard that the deaths were up to, hundreds, thousands. And I'm like,
Yeah,
holy crap, I haven't paid attention to this
and
in so
yeah,
long.
the
And
jump.
I felt so good to not
Yeah,
be consumed by it. But in the same sense, it's in my nature. I can't help but listen to podcasts and just, I always have my ear to the ground listening to things and kind of just staying informed, because the news that comes out, you'll like, saying that the flu is more deadlier than the coronavirus and all that stuff. I always have been the type of person to try and hear both sides of the story, the CNN
yeah,
and the Fox, and try and same as you, like, you try and form your own opinion
right.
based off of that, and not just be the outrage culture that most people are, where they, Wolf Blitzer said this on CNN, and I'm outraged because of this, and they don't do any more fact checking or looking into, or they just believe it and run with it and get angry. And I tend to just try to keep a balance and not get angry about it. But
Yeah, you've got to be as objective as possible, and I think that's why platforms like certain YouTube channels and podcasters, they digest the information. They have some critical thinking and some what's the word? Constructional thought. Oh, there's the pup.
came down to see what's going on. Yeah.
Yeah, no, to have constructive thoughts on it, and I think that's why younger generations are more open to it and go for different mediums like podcasting and so on, because they at least know what the information that's delivered to them at least comes from a different set of lenses, and it's not like they were given permission to report
Mm.
the news. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So, man, thanks for asking to come on. I love it. I always welcome. I'm glad
Thanks.
you came on, especially on this medium now that we're doing both video and the podcasting. And
Yeah, I love it. It's nice. I came on before on the Nobody's podcast, and I kind of get detached with
you don't
the
know what the
audio.
reaction is, right, on the other side.
Yeah, and I'm a very rambling person, so sometimes I tend to ramble on about just nonsense, and then it's nice to be able to have a face-to-face conversation.
Yeah, you
Well,
didn't see me doze off and fall
lens to
asleep.
lens. Yeah, I didn't see it drooling or glossing over too much, so I think I did all right. But
Right on.
I'm glad you had me on. I enjoyed it. It was awesome.
Good. Well, you're looking good, man. And
Thanks.
thanks for sharing. And take care of the family. Do the
Yes.
right things, and like I said, keep staying positive and hopeful, and just be ready that when we go back, you're going to have to kick more ass just to stay ahead and get ahead. And
Oh,
that's
yeah.
what we're here to do. Podcast and chill. What more can you ask for? My main man out of the London area, Tyler. Thanks again for coming on, man.
Thanks for having me.
Right on. Thanks, everybody. Please hit the subscribe button, and don't forget to listen to us on Podcast and Chill. We're releasing episodes every day or every couple of days, so stick with us. And next time, I should be recording again tomorrow, so look out for more content and material. And I salute you. Love you guys. Thank you very much.
Stay
Thanks for joining
safe,
us.
everybody.
Take care.